Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is CJ, the Populist New Yorker, and today we're going to be taking a look at tomorrow's special election occurring in New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. Now, the reason this election is happening is because the incumbent representative, Deb Haaland, resigned her position in the House of Representatives to become the Secretary of Interior. So as a result, we're having a special election in this district between the two main candidates, Melanie Stansbury and Mark Moores, the Republican. If we take a look at the district as a whole, it is a very Democratic-leaning district. Obviously, a lot of pollsters have put it in the safe or likely Democratic camp. We don't really have a lot of polling out of the district, but the one poll we do have has Melanie Stansbury up a tremendous amount. Something that I find interesting about the race itself is that a lot of money and campaigning is actually being put into a district that is basically a safe Democratic district. If we take a look at New Mexico's 1st Congressional District, it is a D+9. I don't necessarily agree with the Cook Partisan Voting Index because some of the states' rankings it has after the 2020 election, it has states like Virginia, Colorado, and New Mexico as like tilt blue or something like that, which I think is a little bit ridiculous. So I don't necessarily agree with the partisan lean index, but nonetheless, this one has a +9. Also, if we take a look at the demographics of the district level, there is a high Hispanic population, nearly 42%. So this is a minority-majority district, and that is certainly one reason why it is a Democratic district. It's also the most urban district in New Mexico, and that's surely saying a lot because New Mexico is a fairly sparsely populated state, but the district encompasses basically all of Brunillo County and some surrounding rural areas as well. Brunillo County, if we look at the 2020 election results real quick, voted for Joe Biden by a margin of 61-36, so it's not really anything close to competitive at this point. Brunillo, interestingly enough, the last time this county went red was in 2014 with incumbent Governor Susana Martinez winning a landslide victory in the state. As I alluded to earlier, though, this district is not really competitive, so why bother talking about it? Well, the main thing about the special election that has a lot of people watching it is the margin of victory that the Democrat has. If the Democrat, Stansbury, I think, if she does well, she overperforms Haaland or does around the same, that's a good sign for Democrats next year in the midterms that they have a lot of enthusiasm still. There's a lot of enthusiasm for Democrats to keep the House. But of course, if Stansbury does bad, however, and by bad I don't mean lose, but say she only wins by around 12 or 10 points or something like that, does pretty poorly, that bodes very bad and ominous news for the Democrats heading into the midterms. This district in particular has not been really competitive since 2004 in terms of presidential or statewide races. Something interesting to note, though, Heather Wilson, who was the former nominee, former congresswoman from this district, she was voted out in the 2008 wave, and ever since then the district has been controlled by Democrats. Something I also find of note about this district, it seems to be a springboard in New Mexico politics. Martin Heinrich is a current senator from New Mexico. Michelle Lujan Grisham is the current governor, and Deb Haaland is now the Secretary of the Interior. So it seems like this district, given that it encompasses Albuquerque, which is the main population center of New Mexico, seems to be the springboard from which a lot of the representatives move on to be senators, governors, whatever, what have you. It seems to be a springboard in New Mexican politics. So perhaps if Stansbury wins this district, which she is almost guaranteed to, she might perhaps be a future gubernatorial nominee or perhaps even a future senator from this state, which will surely be really interesting. So again, we look at the 2020 election results out of New Mexico. New Mexico goes to Joe Biden by around 11 points. So that's not really a competitive margin. It's not necessarily safe, but it's very, very likely, in my opinion anyway. If we break down those results a bit further, we'll see that particularly the areas in which Republicans were able to improve were actually a lot of these Hispanic majority counties, some of which are bordering around the first congressional district. Again, we could look at the results for the U.S. Senate seat, which certainly had a different result than that of the presidential. The Senate race was a lot closer, being a 51-45 margin in comparison to 54-43. So there certainly is a difference here, obviously, but we're going to take a look at the congressional district's results mainly because that's obviously what we want to focus on. So it's one of the more Democratic districts, naturally, in the state, but it's not the most Democratic. The most Democratic in 2020 was actually New Mexico's 3rd congressional district, which was formerly Ben Ray Lujan's district, who has now gone on to become senator. So that is a D plus 17 district, but I want to focus on Holland's district, mainly because the Republican nominee did better in Brunillo County, overperformed Donald Trump in this county. And if we look at the general election results at large for this House seat, it has gotten redder over the past 3 cycles, and we're going to take a look at that. Deb Haaland only, despite being an incumbent, and obviously Democrats winning New Mexico, she only won this seat by 17 points. That doesn't sound like a small margin, but if we compare it to 2018, this is 2016, sorry. If we compare it to 2018, Deb Haaland's victory being over 20 points. Now, again, you could say, well, a blue wave year, but we could go back to 2016 and look at Michelle Lujan Grisham's results. 65-34 is overwhelming, and even with incumbency advantage, it's still an insanely overwhelming victory, even if we negate that. So certainly this district has trended more Republican, which obviously begs the question, is that trend going to continue? One thing to look forward to tomorrow, or to really look at, is whether or not the Republican energy among Latinos will continue. Obviously, places like Miami-Dade County, many areas with large Hispanic populations, trended very, very Republican. If we look at the state of New Mexico in particular, and we look at the trends from 2016, a lot of trends here kind of all over the place, because some of the trends happened in, obviously, Hispanic majority counties up here. So the trends were a little bit mixed in New Mexico, not as much of a monolith as we've seen previously. However, the white vote in New Mexico has also shifted to the left, so that could counteract any rightward shift among Latinos, because I think there is a demographic plurality in the state. It's not exactly Hispanic majority, but it is close. So that certainly will play a factor. Another huge thing, of course, is going to be turnout and energy. The only way you really win a safe district is purely by just having overwhelming turnout and low turnout among Democrats. I don't think there's necessarily going to be low turnout, but there could be average turnout, which gives Holland's successor, Stanberry, I think? I keep forgetting her name. Giving the Democrat a lesser advantage, which would certainly, again, trigger alarm bells for the next election. Again, we can just compare it to 2018's results. We go back to 2018 and look at the first congressional district. Brunillo County, obviously redder than it was statewide, but that's expected in a House seat. Still a lot bluer than it was in 2020, where it was only going to the Democrat, in this case Haaland, by only around 17 points or so. This is more of a 25-point margin. Again, it's a blue wave year, but still, I think it is significant nonetheless. So certainly one thing to look out for tomorrow is the margin of victory that the Democrat gets. If Michael Moores, for instance, gets 43% of the vote or something sort of high like that, 42, 43, if he outperforms the Republican in 2020, I'd say that's certainly alarming for Democrats going forward. I certainly think that's a very bad sign. That means that enthusiasm is not with you. You don't have the energy going into this. And obviously this is just one case study, but I think it's indicative overall of a larger trend that we're going to see next year, because next year there's going to be higher Republican turnout, I think, either way. I think the question is how much, and how much that higher turnout is going to impact races on the governor level, on the Senate level, and of course on the House level. So really, that's really it for this election. I think the Democrats are going to win handedly tomorrow. However, the real debate is whether they're going to win a sort of, 20-point victory or 15-point victory or 25 or something like that. It really all depends on the margin. I personally think this race is going to be on the closer side based on what I've seen. Again, there's only one poll, so we really can't go off of that. But the fact that the second gentleman and other large Democratic figures are campaigning in this House seat, which is a safe House seat, does kind of raise red flags that they might be in a little bit of trouble, although I don't think it's nearly enough to upend the result and give it to a Republican. So ultimately, we're going to see tomorrow how this election goes, and depending on how it goes, it will really serve as kind of an early bellwether to how the 2022 midterms really do play out. So anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this video if you enjoyed with friends that you think would be interested in this kind of content. As always, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.